This direct experience is often referred to as Satori or Kensho in Zen, and is the goal of Zen practice. It is a sudden and profound realization of the non-dual nature of reality, in which the illusion of separation and duality is shattered and the true nature of the self and the world is revealed. As the Zen master Huineng says in the Platform Sutra, the mind is the root of all things, and all things are only manifestations of the mind. When the mind is realized as empty, all things are realized as empty too. This passage points to the way in which the direct realization of the emptiness of the mind leads to the realization of the emptiness of all things. When we let go of the conceptual constructs and categories that divide and label reality, we discover a vast and boundless awareness that transcends all dualistic concepts and experiences. The difference between intellectual understanding and direct realization. One of the key insights of the non-dual wisdom traditions is the difference between intellectual understanding and direct realization. Intellectual understanding is based on conceptual thought and linguistic analysis, and can provide a useful framework for exploring the nature of reality. But it is ultimately limited by the inherent limitations and contradictions of conceptual thought, and cannot fully capture the non-dual nature of things. Direct realization, on the other hand, is a non-conceptual, immediate experience of the true nature of reality. It is a direct knowing that transcends the duality of subject and object, self and other, and reveals the inherent emptiness and interdependence of all phenomena. This direct realization is not something that can be achieved through intellectual analysis or philosophical speculation alone. It requires a deep and sustained practice of meditation and contemplation, in which the mind is gradually trained to let go of its attachment to conceptual thought and rest in the natural state of pure awareness. As the great Dzogchen master Longchenpa writes in his Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, within the expanse of spontaneous presence is the ground of all that arises, empty in essence, continuous by nature. It has never existed as anything whatsoever, yet arises as anything at all. This passage points to the non-dual nature of reality, which is empty in essence yet arises as the infinite display of appearances. It suggests that the true nature of the mind is not a fixed or independent entity, but rather a vast and open expanse of pure awareness, in which all phenomena arise and dissolve like waves in the ocean. Exercises for questioning the reality of thoughts and concepts and practicing silent illumination, to deepen our understanding of the emptiness of conceptual thought and the non-dual nature of reality. We can engage in various exercises and contemplations. Here are a few suggestions. 1. Questioning the reality of thoughts and concepts. Take some time to observe your thoughts and concepts as they arise in your mind. Notice how they create a sense of separation and duality between the thinker and the thought, the subject and the object. Ask yourself, are these thoughts and concepts ultimately real and substantial, or are they empty and illusory? Try to find the inherent existence of a thought or concept, separate from the mind that thinks it. Can you locate a thought or concept that exists independently, without depending on the mind that perceives it? See if you can recognize the emptiness and interdependence of all thoughts and concepts. 2. Practicing silent illumination. Sit quietly and rest your mind in its natural state, free from all conceptual grasping and aversion. Let thoughts and concepts arise and pass away on their own, without trying to hold on to them or push them away. Simply remain in the silent illumination of the mind itself, the vast and open awareness that is the ground of all experience. As thoughts and concepts arise, recognize them as empty and illusory, without any inherent existence or substance. See how they are like clouds passing through the sky, or waves rising and falling in the ocean. Rest in the natural clarity and luminosity of the mind itself, beyond all dualistic concepts and distinctions, through these exercises and contemplations. we can begin to directly experience the emptiness of conceptual thought and the non-dual nature of reality. We can recognize that our thoughts and concepts are not ultimately real or substantial, but rather are empty and interdependent, arising and passing away in the vast and open space of awareness. Of course, this recognition is not something that can be achieved through intellectual understanding alone, but rather requires a deep and sustained practice of meditation and contemplation. By letting go of our attachment to conceptual thought and resting in the natural clarity of the mind itself, we can gradually dissolve the illusion of duality and realize the non-dual nature of reality directly in our own experience. As we deepen in this realization, we may find that our relationship to thoughts and concepts begins to transform. Rather than being caught up in the dualistic grasping and aversion of the conceptual mind, we can learn to use thoughts and concepts skillfully and compassionately as tools for communication and understanding, without taking them as the ultimate reality. In this way, the emptiness of conceptual thought becomes a doorway to the vast and open space of non-dual awareness, in which all phenomena arise and pass away in a seamless and interdependent dance of emptiness and form. May we all awaken to this profound and liberating truth, and may we use it to benefit all beings, in all times and places. Chapter 4, The Transformative Power of Non-Dual Realization. In the previous chapters, we explored the limitations of dualistic perception, the logical necessity of the non-dual perspective, and the emptiness of conceptual thought. We saw how the fundamental principles of logic and reason inevitably point towards a non-dual understanding of reality, in which all phenomena are empty of inherent existence and are ultimately identical to the vast, open, and luminous nature of awareness itself. In this chapter, we will examine the transformative power of non-dual realization and explore how it can radically shift our understanding of ourselves, our world, and our place within it. We will draw on insights from various wisdom traditions, as well as contemporary accounts of non-dual awakening, to illustrate the profound and liberating impact of this realization on every aspect of our lives. The liberation of seeing through the illusion of separation. One of the most profound and transformative aspects of non-dual realization is the liberation that comes from seeing through the illusion of separation. When we directly recognize the emptiness of the self and the non-dual nature of reality, we are freed from the suffering and limitations of the dualistic mind, and open to a vast and boundless experience of unity and interconnectedness. This liberation is not something that occurs in a single moment of insight, but rather is a gradual process of deepening and stabilization, as the non-dual understanding permeates every aspect of our being. It is a journey of letting go of our attachment to the limited and conditioned self, and discovering the inherent freedom and wholeness that is our true nature. As we rest more and more in the natural state of non-dual awareness, we begin to experience a profound sense of ease and flow in our lives. We are no longer caught up in the constant struggle of the ego, with its endless grasping and aversion, but rather can respond to the ever-changing conditions of life with openness, flexibility, and compassion. This is beautifully expressed in the words of the contemporary non-dual teacher Adyashanti. When you realize that the self is an illusion, you can begin to live in a new way. You no longer have to defend or protect an image of yourself, because you know that the self is not real. You no longer have to constantly seek approval or validation from others, because you know that your true nature is beyond all concepts and judgments. You can simply be present, open, and responsive to the unfolding of life, without the need to control or manipulate anything. The end of suffering and the discovery of true freedom. Another profound impact of non-dual realization is the end of suffering and the discovery of true freedom. When we see through the illusion of the separate self and recognize our inherent unity with all of life, we are liberated from the root cause of suffering, which is the sense of isolation, lack, and disconnection that comes from believing in an independent and autonomous self. In the non-dual understanding, suffering is not seen as an inherent or unavoidable aspect of life, but rather as a product of our misperception of reality. It arises from our attachment to the dualistic mind, with its constant grasping and aversion. Its endless seeking of pleasure and avoidance of pain. But when we awaken to the non-dual nature of reality, we discover a deep and abiding sense of peace, contentment, and freedom that is not dependent on any external circumstances or conditions. We realize that our true nature is always already whole and complete, and that nothing can ever diminish or threaten our inherent dignity and worth. As the great Advaita sage Ramana Maharshi once said, happiness is your nature. It is not wrong to desire it. What is wrong is seeking it outside when it is inside. In other words, the freedom and happiness that we seek is not something that we need to acquire or attain from the outside world, but rather is the very essence of our being. It is the natural state of non-dual awareness, which is always present and available to us, if only we have the courage and clarity to recognize it. The impact of non-dual realization on perception, experience, and identity. Non-dual realization also has a profound impact on our perception, experience, and sense of identity. When we awaken to the non-dual nature of reality, we begin to see the world in a radically different way, free from the distortions and limitations of the dualistic mind, instead of seeing the world as a collection of separate and independent objects. We recognize the inherent emptiness and interdependence of all phenomena. We see that everything is a manifestation of the same non-dual reality, arising and passing away in a seamless and fluid dance of appearance and emptiness. This shift in perception is not just a cognitive or intellectual understanding, but a direct and embodied realization that transforms our entire experience of being. We no longer feel like a separate and isolated self, cut off from the world around us, but rather experience a deep sense of intimacy, connection, and belonging with all of life. At the same time, our sense of identity undergoes a profound transformation. We no longer identify with the limited and conditioned self, with its endless stories, beliefs, and preferences, but rather rest in the vast and open space of pure awareness, which is the ground and source of all experience. This is beautifully expressed in the words of the Dzogchen master Longchenpa. In the moment of pure awareness, there is no object, no subject, and no in-between. There is no I and no other, no this and no that. In that moment, the mind is completely open, spacious, and luminous, free from all grasping and fixation, the non-dual nature of self and world. As we deepen in our realization of the non-dual nature of reality, we begin to see that the apparent duality of self and world, subject and object, is ultimately an illusion. We recognize that the true nature of the self is not separate from the world, but is the very ground and essence of all that appears. This understanding is beautifully expressed in the Mahayana Buddhist concept of dependent origination, which states that all phenomena arise in dependence on causes and conditions, and are therefore empty of inherent existence. In other words, there is no solid, separate, or independent self that exists apart from the web of relationships and interactions that make up the world, as the Buddhist sage Nagarjuna writes in his Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way. As we integrate the non-dual understanding into our daily lives and relationships, we naturally begin to embody the qualities of wisdom and compassion. We develop a deep sense of clarity, discernment, and skillful means in responding to the challenges and opportunities of life, free from the reactivity and confusion of the dualistic mind. At the same time, we cultivate a profound sense of love, empathy, and care for all beings, recognizing our shared humanity and the interconnectedness of all life. We feel a natural desire to alleviate suffering and promote well-being, not just for ourselves but for all beings everywhere. This embodiment of wisdom and compassion is not something that we need to strive for or attain, but rather is the natural expression of our true nature when it is free from the distortions and limitations of the dualistic mind. It is the spontaneous outpouring of the non-dual reality itself, in all its beauty, dynamism, and creativity. As the Zen master Dogen writes in his Genji Koan, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind as well as the bodies and minds of others drop away. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. In other words, the embodiment of wisdom and compassion is not a state that we need to achieve or maintain, but rather is the natural expression of our true nature when we let go of our attachment to the separate self and open to the endless unfolding of life itself.
What keeps me blow your mind. Why?
to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind as well as the bodies and minds of others drop away. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. In other words, the embodiment of wisdom and compassion is not a state that we need to achieve or maintain, but rather is the natural expression of our true nature when we let go of our attachment to the separate self and open to the endless unfolding of life itself. Exercises for recognizing the dreamlike nature of experience and cultivating the bodhisattva way of life to deepen our realization of the transformative power of non-dual understanding and to integrate this realization into our daily lives. We can engage in various exercises and practices. Here are a few suggestions. 1. Recognizing the dreamlike nature of experience. Take some time to contemplate the dreamlike nature of your experience and see how it is similar to the way in which reality appears from the non-dual perspective. Notice how thoughts, sensations, and perceptions arise and pass away in each moment, without any solid or substantial existence of their own. See if you can recognize the fluid, dynamic, and ever-changing nature of experience, and how it is ultimately empty of any inherent reality or substance. Just as in a dream, the apparent solidity and concreteness of the world is actually a product of our own mind, and has no independent existence apart from our perception and cognition. As you deepen in this recognition, notice how the sense of separation and isolation begins to dissolve, and you open to a more fluid, interconnected, and non-dual experience of reality. 2. Cultivating the bodhisattva way of life. The bodhisattva way of life is a central ideal in Mahayana Buddhism, and refers to the path of compassionate action and service for the benefit of all beings. It is based on the recognition of the non-dual nature of self and other, and the deep interconnectedness of all life. To cultivate the bodhisattva way of life, begin by generating a sincere aspiration to awaken for the benefit of all beings. Recognize that your own happiness and freedom are ultimately inseparable from the happiness and freedom of others, and dedicate yourself to the path of wisdom and compassion. In your daily life, look for opportunities to be of service to others, in whatever way you can. This might involve volunteering your time and resources to help those in need, offering a kind word or gesture to someone who is struggling, or simply bringing a spirit of openness, curiosity, and care to all your interactions and relationships. As you deepen in this practice, notice how the sense of separation and self-centeredness begins to dissolve, and you naturally embody the qualities of wisdom, compassion, and skillful means in all your actions and choices. Through these and other practices, we can begin to integrate the transformative power of non-dual realization into every aspect of our lives, and discover a new way of being in the world, free from the limitations and suffering of the dualistic mind. May all beings awaken to the liberating truth of the non-dual nature of reality, and may all beings everywhere be happy, peaceful, and free. Chapter 5, Non-Duality in Christian Contemplative Practice. Throughout the previous chapters, we have explored the non-dual nature of reality from various philosophical and experiential perspectives, drawing on the rich wisdom traditions of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism. However, it is important to recognize that the insights and practices of non-duality are not limited to these Eastern traditions, but can also be found within the contemplative traditions of Christianity. In this chapter, we will examine the non-dual essence of Christian mysticism and contemplative practice, and explore how these traditions can deepen and enrich our understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. We will draw on the teachings of Christian mystics such as Meister Eckhart, Saint John of the Cross, and Thomas Merton, as well as the practices of centering prayer and Christian meditation, to illustrate the transformative power of non-dual realization within the context of Christian spirituality. The non-dual essence of Christian mysticism. At the heart of Christian mysticism is the recognition of the ultimate unity of God and creation, and the essential oneness of the human soul with the divine. This non-dual understanding is beautifully expressed in the words of the 14th century German mystic Meister Eckhart: "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one eye, one seeing, one knowing, one love." In this passage, Merton points to the innermost core of our being, which is a point of nothingness that is untouched by the dualistic mind and its endless fantasies and illusions. This point is the very ground of our existence, and it is identical with the pure, undivided nature of God Himself. These and other teachings of Christian mysticism suggest that the ultimate goal of spiritual practice is not the attainment of a particular state or experience, but rather the realization of our inherent unity with the divine. This realization is not something that we can achieve through our own efforts or merits, but rather is a gift of grace that arises when we let go of our attachment to the separate self and open to the ever-present reality of God's love. The practice of centering prayer and Christian meditation. One of the central practices of Christian contemplative spirituality is centering prayer, a form of silent, wordless prayer that aims to cultivate a deep and direct experience of God's presence. Centering prayer was developed by the Trappist monks Thomas Keating, William Menninger, and Basil Pennington in the 1970s, and has since become a widely practiced form of Christian meditation around the world. The basic practice of centering prayer involves choosing a sacred word or phrase that symbolizes one's intention to consent to God's presence and action within, and then silently repeating this word whenever one becomes aware of thoughts or distractions during the prayer period. The goal is not to suppress or eliminate thoughts, but rather to gently release them and return to the sacred word, allowing oneself to rest in the silent depths of God's presence. As one continues to practice centering prayer over time, the mind begins to quiet and the heart begins to open, allowing for a deeper and more direct experience of God's love and wisdom. This experience is not a matter of intellectual understanding or emotional fervor, but rather a simple, wordless knowing that arises from the depths of one's being. In many ways, the practice of centering prayer is similar to the non-dual practices of Buddhist and Hindu meditation, which aim to cultivate a direct and unconditional awareness of the ultimate nature of reality. Like these practices, centering prayer involves a letting go of conceptual thought and an opening to the vast, luminous expanse of pure awareness that is the ground of all existence. Another important practice in Christian contemplative spirituality is the practice of Christian meditation, which involves the use of short, repeated prayers or phrases to focus the mind and open the heart to God's presence. One of the most well-known forms of Christian meditation is the Jesus Prayer, which involves the repeated invocation of the name of Jesus with the breath, often accompanied by a physical posture of reverence and humility. Like centering prayer, the practice of Christian meditation aims to cultivate a deep and direct experience of God's presence, beyond the limitations of the discursive mind and its endless chatter. By focusing the attention on a sacred word or phrase, the mind begins to settle and the heart begins to open, allowing for a more intimate and immediate encounter with the divine. The relevance of non-duality for Christian spirituality. The insights and practices of non-duality have much to offer Christian spirituality, both as a means of deepening our understanding of the ultimate nature of reality and as a practical path of transformation and awakening. On a theological level, the non-dual perspective challenges some of the dualistic assumptions that have long characterized much of Christian thought, such as the separation of God and creation, spirit and matter, heaven and earth. By recognizing the ultimate unity of all things in God, non-duality invites us to see the world as a sacred manifestation of the divine, and to recognize our own inherent divinity as children of God. On a practical level, the non-dual practices of centering prayer and Christian meditation offer a powerful means of cultivating a direct and transformative encounter with God's presence. Beyond the limitations of the conceptual mind and its endless divisions and distinctions. By learning to rest in the silent depths of pure awareness, we can begin to experience the ultimate reality of God's love and wisdom, and to embody this reality in our daily lives and relationships. Moreover, the non-dual perspective can help us to recognize the essential unity of all spiritual traditions, and to see the common ground that underlies their diverse expressions and practices. By recognizing that all authentic paths of awakening ultimately point to the same non-dual reality, we can begin to let go of our attachment to sectarian divisions and dogmatic beliefs, and to embrace a more inclusive and compassionate vision of spirituality. Ultimately, the relevance of non-duality for Christian spirituality lies in its invitation to let go of our limited, dualistic notions of self and world, and to open to the vast, unbounded reality of God's love and presence. As we learn to rest in the silent depths of pure awareness, we begin to experience a profound sense of unity and interconnectedness with all things, and to recognize our own I. Exercises for experiencing the non-dual nature of Christian contemplative practice. To deepen our understanding and experience of the non-dual essence of Christian contemplative practice, we can engage in various exercises and meditations. Here are a few suggestions. 1. Practicing centering prayer. Set aside 20 to 30 minutes each day for the practice of centering prayer. Choose a sacred word or phrase that symbolizes your intention to consent to God's presence in action within, such as love, peace, or be still. Sit comfortably with your eyes closed, and silently repeat the sacred word whenever you become aware of thoughts or distractions. As you continue the practice, allow yourself to sink deeper and deeper into the silent depths of God's presence. Letting go of all concepts, images, and expectations. Simply rest in the vast, open space of pure awareness, allowing yourself to be held and sustained by the infinite love and wisdom of God. 2. Meditating on the Jesus Prayer. The Jesus Prayer is a short, repeated invocation of the name of Jesus, often accompanied by the breath and a physical posture of reverence and humility. The most common form of the prayer is, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. To practice the Jesus Prayer, find a quiet place where you can sit comfortably with your eyes closed. Begin by taking a few deep breaths, and then silently repeat the prayer in rhythm with your breathing, allowing the words to penetrate deep into your heart and mind. As you continue the practice, let go of all other thoughts and distractions, and simply rest in the presence of Jesus, allowing His love and grace to fill your entire being. Experience the way in which the repetition of the prayer begins to dissolve the sense of separation between yourself and God, revealing the essential unity of all things in Christ. 3. Contemplating the non-dual teachings of Christian mystics. Take some time to read and reflect on the non-dual teachings of Christian mystics such as Meister Eckhart, St. John of the Cross, and Thomas Merton. Allow their words to penetrate deep into your heart and mind, revealing the ultimate unity of God and creation, and the essential oneness of your own soul with the divine. As you contemplate these teachings, notice how they begin to shift your perception of reality, dissolving the dualistic divisions between self and other, spirit and matter, heaven and earth. Experience the way in which this non-dual understanding begins to transform your relationship with God, with others, and with the world around you. Through these and other exercises, we can begin to experience the non-dual essence of Christian contemplative practice, and to recognize the way in which this practice can deepen and enrich our understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. May we all awaken to the infinite love and wisdom of God, and may we embody this love and wisdom in all that we say and do, for the benefit of all beings. Chapter 6, Non-Duality and the Future of Philosophy. As we have seen throughout this book, the non-dual perspective has profound implications not only for our personal and spiritual lives, but also for our understanding of the nature of reality and the role of philosophy in exploring and articulating this understanding. In this final chapter, we will explore some of these implications in more depth, and consider how the insights of non-duality might shape the future of philosophical inquiry and discourse. The implications of non-dual realization for Western philosophy. One of the central challenges facing Western philosophy today is the need to integrate the insights of non-dual wisdom traditions with the rational, analytical approaches that have long characterized the Western philosophical tradition. While there have been some notable attempts to bridge this gap, such as the work of Ken Wilber and other integral theorists, there remains a significant divide between the contemplative and the philosophical, the experiential and the conceptual. At the heart of this divide is the fundamental assumption of duality that underlies much of Western thought, the belief in the ultimate separation of subject and object, mind and matter, self and world. This dualistic framework has given rise to a host of philosophical problems and paradoxes, from the mind-body problem to the problem of free will, that have long plagued Western philosophy and continue to generate endless debate and discussion. The non-dual perspective offers a radical challenge to this dualistic framework, suggesting that the ultimate nature of reality is not characterized by separation and division, but rather by a fundamental unity and interconnectedness that transcends all conceptual boundaries and distinctions. From this perspective, the apparent duality of subject and object, mind and matter, is ultimately an illusion, a product of our limited, conceptual way of knowing that obscures the true nature of reality. This non-dual understanding has profound implications for many of the central questions and concerns of Western philosophy, from epistemology and ontology to ethics and aesthetics. It suggests that the traditional dichotomies and distinctions that have long structured philosophical inquiry, such as the distinction between appearance and reality, fact and value, reason and emotion, are ultimately false and misleading, and that a more integrated, holistic approach is needed to adequately address the complexity and richness of human experience and understanding. Moreover, the non-dual perspective challenges the very notion of philosophy as a purely intellectual or conceptual enterprise, suggesting that true understanding can only arise through a direct, experiential encounter with the nature of reality itself. This encounter is not a matter of acquiring new information or developing new theories, but rather of letting go of our conceptual frameworks and assumptions and opening ourselves to the vast, unbounded reality that is always already present, right here and now. The potential for a new, integrative philosophy. Despite the challenges and limitations of the Western philosophical tradition, there is also a growing recognition of the need for a new, more integrative approach to philosophical inquiry, one that draws on the insights and practices of both Eastern and Western traditions to develop a more comprehensive and holistic understanding of the nature of reality and the human condition. This integrative approach is already beginning to take shape in a variety of fields and disciplines, from cognitive science and neuroscience to ecology and systems theory. In each of these areas, there is a growing recognition of the interdependence and interconnectedness of all things, and a corresponding need for more holistic, non-dual modes of understanding and inquiry. Within philosophy itself, there are also a number of promising developments that point towards a more integrative, non-dual approach. For example, the emergence of embodied cognition and enactive theories of mind challenge the traditional split between mind and body, suggesting that cognition is fundamentally grounded in our embodied, sensorimotor interactions with the world. Similarly, the growth of environmental and eco-philosophy highlights the interdependence of all living systems and the need for a more holistic, non-anthropocentric approach to understanding the natural world. At the same time, there is also a growing interest in the philosophical implications of contemplative practices such as mindfulness and meditation, which offer a direct, experiential means of exploring the nature of consciousness and the self. By integrating these practices into philosophical inquiry, we can begin to develop a more embodied, experiential approach to understanding that complements and enriches our conceptual and analytical modes of knowing. Ultimately, the potential for a new, integrative philosophy lies in our willingness to let go of our attachment to dualistic concepts and categories, and to open ourselves to the vast, unbounded reality that is always already present, right here and now. This letting go is not a matter of abandoning reason or logic, but rather of recognizing their limitations and situating them within a larger, more holistic context of understanding. As we do so, we may begin to discover a new kind of philosophy, one that is grounded in the direct, immediate experience of reality itself, and that speaks to the deepest questions and concerns of the human heart and mind. This philosophy will not be a purely intellectual or academic pursuit, but rather a way of life, a path of awakening and liberation that transforms our understanding of ourselves, our world, and our place within it. The importance of experiential inquiry and embodied practice. Central to this new, integrative philosophy is the recognition of the importance of experiential inquiry and embodied practice. While conceptual analysis and logical argumentation will always play a vital role in philosophical discourse, they must be complemented and informed by a direct, immediate encounter with the nature of reality itself, beyond the limitations of the discursive mind and its endless proliferation of concepts and categories. This encounter is not something that can be achieved through intellectual understanding alone, but rather requires a deep and sustained practice of contemplative inquiry and embodied realization. It is a matter of learning to rest in the vast, open space of pure awareness, beyond the boundaries of the conceptual mind and its dualistic structures of self and other, subject and object. Through practices such as mindfulness, meditation, and yoga, we can begin to cultivate this non-dual awareness and to experience the world in a more direct, immediate, and holistic way. These practices are not a matter of escaping from reality or transcending the world, but rather of fully embracing and embodying the richness and complexity of our lived experience. In all its beauty, mystery, and wonder, as we deepen in these practices, we may begin to discover a new way of knowing and being in the world, one that is grounded in the direct, immediate experience of reality itself. This way of knowing is not separate from our rational, analytical modes of understanding, but rather complements and enriches them, providing a more complete and integrated picture of the nature of things. Ultimately, the goal of this experiential inquiry and embodied practice is not to achieve some particular state or experience, but rather to awaken to the fundamental nature of reality itself, beyond all states and experiences. It is a matter of recognizing our inherent unity with all things, and of living from this recognition in a way that is authentic, compassionate, and wise. This shift in perspective has profound implications for how we approach the challenges of our time. It invites us to let go of our narrow, short-term interests and to work for the greater good of all beings, recognizing that our own well-being is ultimately inseparable from the well-being of the larger whole. Ultimately, the role of non-dual wisdom in addressing the challenges of the 21st century is to help us to awaken to our true nature as expressions of the infinite, boundless reality that is the ground of all being. As we do so, we may begin to discover a new way of being in the world, one that is characterized by wisdom, compassion, and skillful action, and that seeks to create a more just, sustainable, and beautiful world for all. The ongoing journey of awakening, as we come to the end of this exploration of non-duality and its implications for philosophy, spirituality, and daily life, it is important to remember that the journey of awakening is an ongoing one, with no fixed endpoint or destination. The insights and practices of non-dual wisdom are not a matter of achieving some final state of enlightenment or perfection, but rather of continually opening ourselves to the vast, unbounded reality that is always already present, right here and now. This opening is not a matter of acquiring new knowledge or experiences, but rather of letting go of our limited, dualistic ways of knowing and being in the world. It is a matter of surrendering our attachment to concepts, beliefs, and identities, and of resting in the pure, luminous awareness that is the ground of all existence. As we deepen in this surrender, we may begin to discover a new way of being in the world, one that is characterized by a profound sense of ease, clarity, and compassion. We may begin to see the world not as a problem to be solved or a challenge to be overcome, but rather as a living, dynamic expression of the infinite, boundless reality that is our true nature. This way of being is not a matter of withdrawing from the world or rejecting our humanity, but rather of fully embracing and embodying the richness and complexity of our lived experience, in all its beauty, mystery, and wonder. It is a matter of living from the heartfelt recognition of our inherent unity with all things, and of bringing this recognition to bear on all aspects of our lives and relationships. As we continue on this journey of awakening, it is important to approach it with a spirit of humility, curiosity, and open-mindedness. We must be willing to question our assumptions and beliefs, to let go of our attachments and aversions, and to open ourselves to the ever-unfolding mystery of existence. At the same time, we must also cultivate a deep sense of compassion and care for ourselves and for all beings, recognizing that the path of non-dual realization is not a solitary one, but rather is interwoven with the lives and experiences of all those around us. We must seek to create a world in which all beings can thrive and flourish, and in which the wisdom and compassion of the non-dual perspective can be fully expressed and embodied. Ultimately, the journey of non-dual awakening is a journey of coming home to our true nature, of recognizing the infinite, boundless reality that is the ground of all being, and of living from this recognition in a way that is authentic, compassionate, and wise. May all beings awaken to this reality, and may all beings be happy, peaceful, and free.